Hey there, it's Natalie. I'm back here with another episode on the newly released Très Flavored podcast, adding some flavor into your days. And I wanted to talk today and share my perspective on what I would call the social life of an entrepreneur. I just have been reflecting on sort of what I've been going through and just how my life has changed since I started working on this project, this business. And I thought that maybe sharing my experiences would allow me to hear other people's experiences if they're going through similar things or kind of, I don't know, make that connection. Sometimes we feel like we're alone in whatever we're pursuing, and although I'm going to talk about my life in entrepreneurship, I think this can actually apply to a lot of different areas of your life, perhaps. So, whether it's kind of like this side hobby that you're trying to pursue, or maybe you're trying to start your own business, or even just like your daily grind. I don't know, just kind of having some perspective on things. So, the reason I actually wanted to share this is because I became I started thinking about how I have some good friends here in Montreal. It's not my home city, so I don't like, it's not full of my closest network of people, but I've actually become really close with some people who are here. And there's one friend in particular that I think of who is great because she's always reaching out to me and offering to hang out, and I just keep telling her no. And it's not because I don't love her to pieces, and it's not because I'm not a social person. And what I realized is it's because I'm really uberly fixated on making my business work. So that might not sound like something totally profound and insightful, but I just think, especially when it comes to friends, I find it's easy to lose perspective on our expectations about friends and what we do for friends and what friends should do for us. Or we kind of get lost in this tit for tat thing, is how I find it. And I find that it's really easy to get caught up in, I think friends specifically, because family is like another thing. It's sort of like there's this underlying expectation that somehow family will help you out, and be there for you regardless of how much you're in contact or whatever. But friends, there's this like kind of balance struggle if you're not sort of keeping in mind the other person's perspective and having some empathy. So I wanted to talk about this because it's been a big part of the last year and a half of my life, I would say. Um, so I may call this the social life of an entrepreneur, but it might be better called the lack of social life of an entrepreneur. And I'm not saying this is the same game for everyone, but what I have found and the way that I've chosen to pursue my business and entrepreneurial goals is like sort of becoming a hermit in my house working on stuff. And there are a lot of people that do it another way and go out and socialize and go to events and stuff like that. And that just doesn't fly with me. It's not my jam. So this might be irrelevant to other people, but I don't know, just having that feeling of like sort of expectations, it might be good to kind of touch on that and be aware of like where we're at with that. So I just want to talk about sort of the experiences and feelings that I've gone through in this last period. First of all, I want to talk about friends. So that's sort of what brought me to discuss this. And it's funny because when we come to friends, you go like in your, what you remember about childhood friends is like they were always there for you and you always wanted to do stuff with them. And it was like there was never this question of like, I'm too busy for you kind of thing. It was like you were always making time for your friends. That's what I remember anyway. And then there was this period where you started to like, go from high school, and then if you pursued university or if you pursued like traveling or if you worked, then you started to like have those childhood expectations of friendships, and you like carried those through to your like adulthood, and you started realizing that those friends weren't there for you in the same way that they were when they were younger. At least that's what I experienced. And so in that process, you started, I think what I experienced is it was easy to think that friends were less awesome because they were not there for you in the same way. And I actually remember like having some resentment towards certain friends because I was like putting these expectations on them about how they should be and sort of not valuing their friendship for what it was, and not, furthermore, not having insight of like, okay, I might have this way of looking at friendship and being there for someone and then expecting them to be, but like that's not really fair. Like everyone starts living different lives, and then you kind of are playing like this is my game and like this is how we should play by my rules, yet like I'm not having empathy for how you're playing your game. And so this became, this idea of like kind of the back and forth became very clear when I was then in like my mid 20s and I started realizing like, oh wait, it's not because they're not a good friend, it's because they're in their jam, you know? And so that sort of having empathy and understanding for someone else who I care a lot about and maybe want them to be in my life and maybe they're not, gave me a lot of good foundation for going into this entrepreneurial world where I'm not maybe like quote unquote the best friend because I'm not there for someone all the time. And what I went into this with, which was I think extremely powerful, is like not to expect things from my friends. Like I remember starting out and sort of like having these moments still of feeling kind of like, okay, how's this going to roll? Because I'm not going to be a social person. I've just decided that's not how I'm going about this. I'm like researching stuff. I'm trying to put like cookie recipes together. I'm trying to work on packaging. I'm working on a website. Like I'm doing a lot of stuff that's taking a lot of my mental energy. And so I'm not going to be there for a lot of friends. And yet, like, how do you maintain that relationship? And what I realized is on my side of it, it was not having expectations of like the other person, and sort of then realizing that that gave me liberties of not having like certain expectations on myself in this moment in my life because I wasn't there to do that. And so then, but what I also wanted to do is I also wanted to like see this from the other person's point of view and realize like it's gonna suck, you know, if like when I talk about this friend that I have in mind, she's always been asking me to do stuff and I feel bad rejecting her all the time, but like just appreciating that she's like really making an effort. And like I don't even think talking about it now I have it down pat, you know. It's really hard because we just get so caught up in our lives. And what I realized is like I'm here playing this entrepreneurship game, and that means like at this period of my life I don't work a Monday to Friday 9 to 5, 7 to 5, whatever it is for you anymore kind of deal. So I don't live for weekends or really embrace my weekends in the way that I would if I was in a different occupation. And that is where I found it to be the trickiest with friends, because we'd be like trying to arrange things, and it was not only in a struggle between the friends and I, like, and when I talk about it in past tense, I'm actually talking about now, it's still a thing, but it wasn't really like it wasn't just like, okay, you versus me, like how are we gonna make this work and how are we gonna hang out. It was like me versus me, because a part of me on the inside really wanted to do stuff, because I'm like, man, I'm in Montreal, I moved here because I love the city, I want to embrace and enjoy the city, and yet on the other hand I'm like, gotta grind it out. And like, so before anything I have to try and find the balance in my life with myself, what I need, what I want, and what I want to work towards. And after that, then I have to relay that to my friends and like try and help them understand where I'm coming from, and also like try and understand where they're coming from and like make it work. And I smile because I realize in saying this that that's like essentially the essence of any relationship, whether it's friendships or family or partners or lovers, whatever, is like having understanding and communicating that. Anyway, So I say all this to say that, like, I think, and I have to give kind of a side shout out to, I know I talk about him a lot, but Gary Vee, who is like my kind of guru, I can't say anything else, of entrepreneurship. And he like talks a lot about doing you, but like it's not black and white, you know? Like you have to not completely erase people from your life. You have to like try and reach an understanding, you know? And so that's been a super interesting, challenging thing that I've been trying to manage while working on my business. And like it's also because then, you know, you go from me having a social life to the other end of thinking I can't have any social life, and like that's not going to work for me or my social networks either. So I think at the end of the day, it's really about that. Like we hear it in every single aspect of our life. It's about communication and like being clear and having understanding, you know? And so what I found, actually, if I refer back to this specific friend, is like there was a moment when I reached out to her and I was like, look, like this is my jam right now. I don't like that I have to reject you all the time, but like I'm doing it not because I don't love you to pieces, but because like I really am in this rhythm. And it actually, in hindsight, that conversation allowed me also to reflect the fact and be reflective of the fact that I actually really wanted her in my life, and I also had this moment of like I could lose her as a friend if she didn't understand that. And also like if I don't, like I can't go 100% on the other side of like not doing anything ever with anyone because I'm like in this bubble of like I'm so important, I'm doing my own business kind of thing. And so what I am, so that's basically the essence, is like, okay, you can get into this mindset of my life is so important to me because I'm an entrepreneur, but you kind of have to find a balance still based on who you are. And like, you know, going back to the Gary Vee comment, like what he talks about a lot is how he like grinded it out a lot. And so I often would latch onto that thinking I needed to do that. And what I've realized is like, that's not 100% me. And like, I need friends in my life. And like, I feel lonely sometimes. And if I want friends to be there and feel like their friendship is valued by me, I have to value it. And valuing it means sometimes making time for it because they're important. And so it's like, I don't know if my conversation about this or my monologue about this has reflected it, but it's fucking hard. Like, it's hard to find that balance because you're going through all these things in yourself with other people and then like doing your hustle thing on your side. So I've really like had to step back a few times and sort of check in with myself and check in with other people. And I feel like now I'm getting on this path of like, okay, maybe you don't need to do it. It's like you don't need to do it because you feel like you need to. It's like you need to do it because you do need to. If that makes sense. Like not to impose this idea that you have to and it has to be at a certain time, but like there's going to be opportunities where you really need to take a break. And you can't expect friends to be there for you if you're never there for them. Like it just, because it comes down to how someone feels valued as a person. And so, and then I kind of started thinking about this also in the relationship sense, and I realized like there's also a very limited amount, aka non-existent amount of like energy that I want, that I'm like feeling I can put into a relationship and having a relationship. And this is okay, like me being a single person, this is my perspective, but there's people that are already in relationships starting entrepreneurship. There are people that are married with kids wanting to pursue entrepreneurship, and there are people that are like you know, yeah, I mean, like it's just you get a range of people, so it's like where you're at in life is going to depend on how you deal with this. But for example, I think the essence is you have to make time for that. You just do. you have to then decide, when am I gonna like call it timeout on my business or my project or my whatever. Because you know what, that's where I think like relationships fail, and so like for me that looks like making myself go out with someone, or make time to like interact with people, or I don't know, like if I'm going on Tinder, whatever. Like the point is, whatever you're like, however I intend to look for that relationship, I have to make time for that. And like that's a weird thing to play with, because the whole relationship, meeting someone, is kind of feels like a toss up, a chance anyway. So you're like, why am I making time for it if it's not even a sure thing? But then like to extend that to people who are in relationships, who are like married with kids, like that just has to be a priority at some point. Because if you're not, you're making that person, those people, feel like valueless, like that they don't have any it's kind of, because like the way that I think about it is, if I were that person, I would start to feel like my presence is just expected and I'm not really valued. So like, why do I want to be with this person anyway? Because there was a moment when they weren't involved in a business and everything was cool, but like things get hard, and so like how are they going to deal with that? And so I think that's super hard as well. And what I've been doing in the last little while is like playing with that and really finding time for doing that stuff, because like at the end of the day, that's also what I want in my life too. I don't just want this business, I want friends and a family and a partner. And if I want those things, just like in my business, if I want my business to succeed, I have to put energy into that. And I think it's really easy to ignore the stuff that you have, quote unquote, have in your life because it's there, as opposed to like working on that part of your life because it's important to you. And what I find in the entrepreneurship world is like there's so much talk about businesses and the business side of it and how you have to give 120%, and then like ignores or misses focusing on that, like you can't just take friends, family, and relationship for granted. So that just to me adds like another level of challenge in life, and that's what I'm realizing life is about. It's about challenge, but it really is like this continual striving, working on something. And so like, and then when I look at it all, there's like sort of another component that I also think changes or is affected in the entrepreneurship world, and it's sort of the scheduling of things and how you manage things. And again, I think it really goes back to that idea of like what you value and what you find important, because since I've been working on my business, I've noticed how so I part-time work early in the morning, so I'm going to bed really early. And it's funny because entrepreneurship, businesses always talk about hustle, 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 stay up till 2 a.m. And that's actually never been my game. Like I've never been, since I've started it, because I've been working a part-time early morning job, like I just need my sleep. So I can go into details of it, but I don't really have to. The point is like you really have to recognize like what is special and unique about your situation and how are you going to manage that. Because I can look at my life and say, I need a good rest. Like some people run on 2 hours. I get that. I respect that, but that's not me. And I need to go to bed at 9:30 and not 2 a.m. And then I wake up and I need to do that job that's like paying my bills. And then I need to work out because that's me and that keeps my mental game good. And then like, yes, I have less time than it as compared to if I had like cut out the workout and cut out the the going to bed early. And that's really hard to like be patient with yourself about, because you just I keep hearing like all these things about what other people are doing, and I'm just like having to listen to that and take out what is useful and like throw away what is not, and that's really really hard, you know? And I just think it like the most important thing is to know you, and the hardest thing is to know you, is what I find. And so, like, I continue this journey and I continue this struggle and I continue this, like, excitement, because it is exciting. And I continue to recognize when I'm not appreciating people as much as I should. And I continue to recognize what I want in a relationship and how I'm going to get that. And, like, I just keep learning. And it's hard. It's hard. And so I think that that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, is just like some real shit. And so I don't know, share your thoughts. Like, this is a super, I don't know, it was like a super important post for me, and super valuable just to be reflective, and like the I realized I say super a lot. The important thing is, the best thing would be to have your feedback and just hear like what, I don't know, what your experience is with this. Do you know someone that is doing the entrepreneurial thing and you get frustrated with them? Are you an entrepreneur yourself and you're getting frustrated? Are you an entrepreneur and you're doing great and you're managing? Are you none of the above and are like trying to find balance in your life and are having troubles or doing it well? Like, I want to hear from all of you. So thanks a lot for listening to this podcast / YouTube video. I would love your feedback, and have a good one. Cheers. Ciao.